Welcome to Disgusted Sunday Mornings. Okay, if you don't know who I am Suzanne Tidkemeyer. I wrote for Pathos for nearly 10 years, a column called No Longer Quivering. I wrote about fundamentalist religions, the wackier ones. I wrote about the wackier evangelical movement. Um, Anything that was weird and CULT related, I used to write about. If you could do the YouTube thing, subscribe, like, whatever, that would really be very awesome. If you don't feel like it, no big deal. Don't bully anybody, please, that I mention. These are just my opinions. They're not written in stone. Please investigate and look at all these things. Do your own. Yeah. Hey, small town Jewel. Hey, Saturn. Um, yeah, that's all I ask. Do your research, as Renell Smith likes to say, and I really like Renell. Oh my God. I am out of American Kleenex and I'm using South American Kleenex. So if I cringe every time I touch my nose because my nose is driving me crazy, I'm using what is no better than sandpaper my nose. Hey, I'm doing better, small town Jewel. Hey, Carolyn. My meds are finally kicking in. I'm finally not screeching for pain meds. I'm just going to say this one time. If you have any kind of intestinal thing going on, infected in guts, I have nothing but sympathy for you. That is the most painful thing. How they're not giving people narcotics for that, I don't know. But I went through like 3 or 4 days going, just shoot me now. So I'm better. I'm better enough that I want to talk about this. I had an incident yesterday where I went to a party here and I encountered somebody that I know. Somebody I don't much like, somebody I've known the entire time I've been here that I mistakenly thought was a good person at first. But after running into her again and again and again at different things and seeing that she was just bat, you know what, crazy, I've avoided her. Well, yesterday she asked me the question I hate. So we're going to talk about that question because I know that if I am getting that question, I'm sure the rest of you are probably getting it too. Those of you that aren't going to church, I know are getting it. Okay, now my husband has joined a church here. We were members of Tamarindo Church for over 4 years. And that was a fine place. We really liked it until it turned into Dog Hair Central for me and I couldn't go. And they refused to honor my ADA accommodations at all, even though they were obligated to. So we left. And our pastor, our favorite pastor in the world, left the place, and the place is just chaos now. There's no real pastor, there's no anything. So we don't go there. Hey, Kim. But my husband goes to a church not far from Brasilito. And I like the pastor there just fine. And I sometimes like their theology. But a lot of times it makes me extremely, extremely uncomfortable because they are doing the whole revival thing. They're doing what we used to call revival in my old quiverful church. They're playing all the revival music. They're saying some of the same revival things. And it's not a matter of me not liking the church or not liking the pastor. It's an issue for me that I get so triggered when I'm there that I can barely sit in the pew. So I haven't been going. I've been using the excuse of COVID, saying COVID rates are too high, and they are too high here for me to consider going. So baffling. Oh, yeah. Kim, we weren't IBLP. We had a lot of people at our church that followed IBLP, just like we had people at our church that supported and followed the Pearl family, some that thought Lori Alexander was the best thing. That is part of the problem with this new church, part of the problem with Tamarindo Church, part of the problem with the old church I used to go to. If you are going to a church that does not have a state, regional, national board, guess what? They're going to change the rules anytime they want, and they're going to come up with all kinds of crazy. Now, I'm not saying that they are doing that at this new church, but they are doing way more reality revival stuff that I'm comfortable with. So I am here now, And thankfully, the COVID rates give me an excuse, a good excuse. Kathleen, hey. Kim, it has been a crazy one. I'm writing on my book, and it's like yesterday I came on ranting a little bit about car sales because when I started having my, I guess my first point where I was leaving here, leaving the church back in the States, our old church, where I was starting to think about it, I started selling cars because I knew that would, my husband asked me to get a job because we had 2 kids going into college. And I started looking at jobs where I could make the most money. And I'd sold cars before and I knew I could. So I started doing that and it was just a cluster. And I was getting it from everybody. I was getting it from the guys working at the dealership all day long to everybody I went to church with. But I knew it was a very rebellious step on my part to take a job doing that. Thank you, Kim. So I was strong enough to walk away finally from that job because the men there were horrible. And so these things, I'm remembering these things in bits and pieces. My husband and I were talking about that a lot on our trip again because we went to Arnold the other day to sell our old car to a mechanic so he can drop in a new transmission and resell it. You just missed me yesterday, Small Town Jewel. Yesterday was interesting. I was kind of all over the place because I had so many things to say about car sales. And I haven't even started to write that chapter of my book because I'd forgotten all about it. It was like when I was writing about this lady named Shrimpleton in the book. And I don't know if I've ever mentioned Shrimpleton here. She was a lady I knew at the old church that I knew and I liked her. And her and her best friend Angelica used to say that they could see angels and they would play with angels. You would be in a room with them and they go, oh, there's an angel here and he's messing with my hair. Oh, let's play with the angel. So they were doing patty cake and whatever. And my husband was like, don't you remember them doing that at our home church meeting? And I was like, no, I don't doubt it happened. But home Bible study was such a cluster of a situation that I had so many other strange, horrible things to deal with that didn't even begin to register on my radar. I described in my book as like seeing a senior citizen, in the middle of the intersection, dance with the Watusi naked. You might stare the first 30 or 40 times you roll through, but after a while, it's just kind of like, it's part of the scenery. You're not even going to notice it. It won't even register here. So like the home Bible study he was talking about, it didn't even register with me because I'd seen it so many other times before. When is your book coming out? Do you have books out already? Congratulations. I'm so interested. Kim, I've just really started writing. I wrote for Pathos for 10 years, for the column, almost 10 years. And I had to take a good solid break of a year. Plus, I had another book I was working on. I had an actual contract for it. It was about a murder that happened in Louisiana that I believe is linked to a independent fundamentalist Baptist troubled teen home. I really believe that that's what happened to this poor girl. And I'm one of the few that did. I wrote like a 30-part article for Pathos about this that got picked up by newspapers all over Texas and Louisiana where this occurred 40 years ago. So I wrote a book about it in length, and I had a contract, and I could not come to agreement about everything with the publishing company. They wanted me to make significant changes because when I first started talking to them about this, I was going to say that I thought the main factor that happened to this poor girl was her having been part of an IFB troubled teen home. But the more I started looking into my old notes and looking at everything that I'd written years ago, the more I realized that there's a possibility, I'd say a strong possibility, that this girl died as a result of sex trafficking, that they were going to traffic her and it went sideways. Maybe she fought back, who knows? And then they killed her. I'm more convinced of that now than ever before. That's not the direction the publisher wanted to go. So since we couldn't come to an agreement, I was going to self-publish. Well, a member of that girl's family asked me not to publish. So I'm sitting on a full book that I finished. I got reams of fiction. I've got whole books that I've not published. Um, I know that they don't understand that. That's why I'm coming on here almost every day talking about this. And I was so burned out when I was done with Pathos. It took a while before I could talk about this stuff. And it took me a long time to be able to get to the point where I could even talk much about my own experiences because I didn't always write about my own experiences for Pathos. One of the things that's crazy about Pathos and what I was doing there is there is a lot that I've had to really just unpick and unpack to figure out what to do. My husband and I, like I said last week, I was giggling because I found that whole big thing of paperwork I had from my old church, my initial church, and I found this. This is the craziest thing of all time. This goes with Neil T. Anderson's The Bondage Breaker. This is the little workbook. And reading through here now with the benefit of like being 15 years out or something, I was pretty horrified. And that wasn't even the worst of the worst. The worst of the worst. And we've been talking about this a lot, my husband and I. And it's the first. These are ministry notes from when we went to deliverance ministry at a church in Wilmington, North Carolina. I was already angry and upset about the deliverance situation with my husband because he sprung it on me. They all sprung it on me, and I was not thinking we were going to do this thing. Hey, that Amber chick. So, I'm trying to understand the Duggar family. I've watched every single episode of my girls growing up. I was taken in by the lovely family thing. We aren't practicing Catholics. Well, the thing is, the Duggars were always hard for me to watch and problematic because they appeared at a time when I was scuttling out. And so I was watching their show and their specials and just almost gagging because there are times still to this day where I have that very visceral reaction to something to do with church. Last night I had that visceral reaction to somebody questioning me and my choices. And I knew the person questioning me was, how can I say this kindly? Not operating in reality. I'm just going to say that. It's a lady that I know here that in the time I've known her, at first we were pretty decent acquaintances, I would say, not really close friends. Social Blade estimates Emily D. Baker's yearly income to be 109 to 1.58 million. How many Bentleys is that? I don't know, Java man, but you do the Bentley math. I have no idea, but I will say this. Emily D. Baker has earned it. She has earned it. She's an attorney. She's doing all of this. So she has earned it. So good for Emily D. Baker. Not so good for that lady that keeps talking about all the Bentleys she can buy that's currently embroiled in so many lawsuits. And I'm expecting to see Duggar lawsuits here eventually too against her. Because you can't defame somebody that many times and not expect there would be some type of pushback. You just cannot do it. And the Duggars, for all their faults, and they are strictly quiverful. They say they're not quiverful, but they are. They practice quiverful theology. Now, like I said, it's been called all kinds of things. It's been called replacement theology. It's been called a number of things. Letting the Lord open and close your womb. But it doesn't always work out as well as it did for the Duggars. 582,000 subscribers. Last two live streams. Yeah, I saw that, Java man. I'm glad that Emily D. Baker has had that kind of success. And I'm happy for her when she's had to be able to read the Josh Duggar lawsuit paperwork because I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to say that again. Now, I can speak to the social work aspect of things. I have worked in social work before. But anything more than that, no. And that's why I got a quick side ramble on the Duggars. Yesterday, I placed a comment on Derek and Jill's blog, I guess it is. They were saying all the right things about Josh's incarceration and sentence and all that. But here's what they didn't mention that I keep mentioning. I keep shouting it from the rooftops. What about the victims? And I pointed out to them that the children that were used to make that stuff that Josh was viewing, this is something that they will carry the weight of the rest of their life. I don't care how much psychiatric help you get, that is forever. That is within you forever, unfortunately. I've known too many kids in residential treatment centers and elsewhere who were used in this stuff. And it's just so wicked. And one of the victims did give a victim impact statement. So I was surprised they didn't give that more weight and give him longer time. But apparently they did hit him pretty hard with the fine that you have to pay the victims of that kind of entertainment if you're caught with it now. I'm glad to see that at least. Maybe the one who shall not be named should consider asking Emily for advice. Of course, my theory is that the lawyers that represent her are the ones that drew the short straw. Java Man, can we talk about her lawyer that had all those form letters you could choose? He named them the Lionel Hutz. He named them after all these crazy fictional lawyers. And I still kind of laugh at that, just like I laugh at the emails I got demanding that I turn over my correspondence with her. It should have already been deleted by her. Good luck with that. So, do you think Jill is strong enough to escape 100%? What's your take on Ginger? I think that Jill is on her path. She's mentioned therapy. Her and Derek mentioned therapy. And I keep saying again and again and again, when you leave a high demand religious organization like a Quiverful Church, the best thing you can do is to go into therapy. You, your significant other, your children. Therapy, therapy, therapy. Doesn't mean therapy forever. It may be a short time, long time, but it's really helpful, I found, for being able to sort my thoughts. And that's, what I'm talking about. I'm sorting my thoughts now from yesterday from this crazy lady. Maybe she's not getting the best legal advice. No, she's not. So Ginger is a whole different nasty ball of wax. I just have to say this. Ginger is, her husband, Jeremy, is involved with John MacArthur and John MacArthur's church in Southern California. My old Quiverful church, our pastor was working on his PhD through John MacArthur's university, his colleges, and his church. And he'd fly out to Los Angeles on a regular basis to take tests or do whatever to do with his degree. And I can't say that I'm real impressed with John MacArthur, just the things he says and the stuff that he supports. So I think Ginger is still under a Quiverful CULT, especially there with John MacArthur, who has said and done a lot of just really horrible, horrible things. I don't know if you guys ever read Pen and Pulpit. It was a news aggregator. It was a John MacArthur mouthpiece, and they pushed his ideas of things. I had my own run-in with Pen and Pulpit a few times when I was writing for Pathos. Like when I explained about the fact that Steven Anderson's young adult sons were having inappropriate sexual chats with 14-year-old girls. When I exposed that, Pen and Pulpit came after me and said, I have no proof. It was like, I have 500 pages of chat. I have the talking to all the families involved. I had all that, and they still wanted to say it did not happen. Why? Because they talked to Anderson, and he as a man told them that did not happen, and me as a woman would not know. That's BS. It happened. So being put down a number of times by those guys, including them emailing me and saying, when I use certain words, say, what does that even mean? It's like, if you're a freaking writer for a news organization, you better damn well know the meaning of some of those words. Did they end up on Dateline? Nope, unfortunately not. Anderson is like a mob boss. He managed to squash a lot of what was going on, but not before I got some family members to turn to CPS in that city and get it investigated. His son suddenly disappeared. going to other states on the run from CPS and the police and everything else. So there we have that. That's a whole different version of Quiverful. And it's a real toxic one. It's a crazy one. As much as I don't like the Duggars, I will at least say they never told anybody to get guns and go to where Obama was, like Anderson apparently must have done, according to everything I'm hearing. Do you think that Jim Bob is on the downfall? Absolutely, Kim. You know, he's made a ton of money off of his TLC show, and he's the one that's benefited. None of the kids have gotten money from this, except for when he's buying a house for one of them. Most of them, I think, are probably on a stipend, from what I can tell. And the show is gone. They will never be able to do anything to make money in a public way as they did before. They'll never be able to promote books. They'll never be able to do television shows, any of that again, because of their firstborn. We used to call him the Smugger Duggar back before any of this happened. And he was always the golden child that his parents covered for all the time. They covered for him a lot. And it just got to be just a bit too much all the time with him. In one episode, they caught one person in Fairfax. This was early on the show, so that one wasn't arrested. They found the person the very next day doing the same thing in chat. Java Man, I remember that episode. We were talking about that yesterday, my husband and I, or was it Friday we were driving? We were talking about To Catch a Predator, and we talked about that episode of that guy. Wasn't he a rabbi there in Fairfax County? I want to say they caught him twice in like 2 days. That was ridiculous. If Jill writes a book or does an interview, will she be allowed legally? Obviously, Derek would know the guidelines. Kim, I think it depends upon if they signed a NDA that they can break. If they did not sign one, then they're home free. They can publish whatever they want. There's not much that Jim Bob could ever do to them. And I think it would be a really bad look for him if he tried to sue a child over an NDA. It would. You think that people are pissed off at him now? I think if he did that, he would lose what fan base he has. Will Jill do that? I don't know. Jill is still hurting and still processing her heart. I can just tell the things that she says. I think the rabbi was a different one. Oh, yeah. Okay, Java Man. I understand. I remember, but I think they caught the rabbi twice. Did they not? 2 different times on To Catch a Predator. I think somebody needs to write the tell-all book. Why? Because too much has gone down. I don't think many people, except for the most hardcore of Duggar huggers, believe everything coming out of Jim Bob's mouth now. Just the ones that are like, that if they caught him in flagrante delicto and they had photographs, these are the same people that would say, oh, no, you're misinterpreting. Bonus points if they caught him in the same house. Yeah, it would be, but I don't think anyone's that dumb. So if there's going to be a tell-all book, I'm expecting Derek to do it. He talked about it a bunch. He's less involved with the entire family. He knows the history. He's a lawyer now, too, so he can legally fight for his own right to publish that. Why do I say they should write the book? Because, like I said, so much has gone down. So many people in the public understand now that the family is less than perfect. Let's just put it that way. And the first person that writes the first tell-all book is going to be the one that benefits. They're going to be the one that makes $1 million. They're going to be the one going around talking to Good Morning America, Dateline, whatever. They're the one that's going to get all the publicity and all the money. And they're probably going to make the most sales. It's kind of like, I was thinking about this the other day. When I was 12 years old, I loved the Osmond brothers. Now, I know I'm dating myself as extremely old, and I am in my 60s now. So I was madly in love with Donny Osmond. Okay, the Osmonds all turned to book writing too after Donny wrote one back sometime in like 2000, maybe late 90s. And he sold a ton of copies. He sold so many copies, I think he was on the bestseller list there for a while. Donnie was the first. So guess what? His book exploded. Everybody else in their family's written books, and nobody has sold quite as many as him. So it's going to be the same thing with the Duggars. The first kid to do a tell-all book is going to be the one to make the dough. It would be off the charts for sure if a Duggar wrote a book. You love the Osmonds too? They used to be my favorite. So I think that is what's going to happen if there's ever a tell-all book, and I think it's going to be Derek. Of course, I could be wrong. I don't think it's going to be Ginger. Ginger is still nominally telling the line, even if she's wearing pants and high heels, and apparently is obsessed with designer brands now, as far as I can tell from looking at Jeremy and her, their Instagram. They seem to be very, 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 very into fashion. And I guess that would be really hard for just about anybody to move to LA and not fall into that, I'm going to say, surface appearance trap. And it's very prevalent out there. There's always the one that should not be named, best friend Amy. Java Man, I think if Amy wrote a book, she would be laughed out. It would probably sell, but people would be laughing. Women are supposed to be able to do anything. Yes, they are, but not in quiverful. You have to do everything in quiverful, but only those prescribed things they're going to say that you can do. Like raising the children, like washing dishes, like doing clothes, all those gendered things. And I'm not a big fan of gender roles. I wasn't even when I was there, because it didn't work for my husband. I did not work well. We are both cut differently, I think, than regular gender roles, and we just never could make it work for us. They make me mad, like shake them. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard not to get pulled into that. It is really, really hard. So, I don't know what's going to happen with the Duggars, except I don't see anything good. Jim Bob didn't make good money. That house must cost a ton to heat and to cool. I just have a feeling that their expenses are high, their income's high, their expenses are high, and they're going to eat through that money like that, I think, particularly when they're spending it on defending Josh from various things, legally and otherwise. I'm thinking that they're on their descendancy now, and it's probably a merciful thing. It's probably a merciful thing. So I got to get back to my main subject, which was, what do you do when people start asking you questions about your faith life and what you believe? I was at a place yesterday. I went to a graduation party for a dear friend's daughter here, who lives right down the street from us, maybe a half mile away. We've been there a bunch of times, and the girl graduated from CREA, which is Costa Rica International School. International Academic, yeah, CREA, not so. Here I was getting that wrong even. This girl was the valedictorian. She is going on to a scholarship with an Ivy League university. This school is awesome. They get people in all the time at Ivy League places. And so I went, and I ran into somebody there. I'm just going to call her Mary Moonbeams. This is somebody I know from my old church here in Tamarindo. I was friendly with her for a while until I ran into her at a party, and she acted like she had lost her damn mind. And since that point, I pretty much avoided Mary Moonbeams. I try to have nothing to do with her. When I see her, I'm not ugly. I'm just like, hi, bye. Just like when you have all these problematic people around you, and you know they're problematic, and you don't want to be rude and ugly and nasty, man, and say, get away from me, like you're really wanting to do. But you're really not wanting to have much of anything to do with them. You're like, these are my boundaries. This is where I stand. Well, yesterday, and she was at this party. And actually, Kim, Mary Moonbeams is not too far from her chosen name. I'm just going to say it that way. Not her legal name, her chosen name. And everything about this woman, now that I've gotten to know her a little bit better, is calculated for attention. She tries to star in every little theater type production here. She keeps posting photos of herself almost completely undressed on her Facebook wall, claiming she's going to start her career as a supermodel at any moment. She's like 38. That's way too old to be a supermodel. And she's never done modeling before. This is a recent obsession. So she does things like that. And whenever there's a party, she pushes herself forward and does all these crazy things. I remember a party that we were all at to celebrate a friend's business, and there was a huge cake, and they cut it up into slices. I had no cake that night because if you know me, you know I got crazy food allergies. They're part of my cell. So I was having a really bad stomach problem that day. So I wasn't eating nothing. I think I had crackers and ginger ale at that party. So Mary was cutting up the cake. She wasn't cutting them. She was taking the slices and handed them to people. And she was like drooling on them and saying, I'm a breatharian. I haven't eaten in 7 days. But this stuff is horrible. And I was like, come on, lady, put down the cake and back away, please. So that was like so weird. So I'm telling you, she's just kind of got some issues and she's not entirely there. So she's learned with me to leave me alone because of something that happened at a party once where she kept chasing me around. I was running off to throw up every 5 minutes because I was sick. And it hit me at the party. So I'm at this beautiful graduation party yesterday at this resort. There just to congratulate my friend. And up pops Mary Moonbeams. And she keeps sidling up to where we are, talking to other people, trying to insert herself in the conversation, trying to insert herself in all the action with everybody, like she always does. And I'm just kind of side-eyeing her because I don't want to be involved in any way, shape, or form. Like I said, hi, bye. So we're getting ready to leave. We say, we're leaving because we didn't intend to stay long. The party was mostly high school age kids, college age kids that were all buddies, and a few adults showing up and saying, hey, here's the check for your graduation gift. So we were trying to leave, and Mary was sitting with my friend off to the side. And as we went past, Mary said to me, are you going to church tomorrow? And I said, why, no, I'm not going to church tomorrow. And she said, why are you not going to church tomorrow? Now, keep in mind, we used to go to church with her in Tamarindo Church. And the new church, where the pastor describes it as the mega church in the jungle, where my husband goes, but I'm not feeling it. I've had bad experiences there already. So she asked me why, and I'm standing there for a minute or two wanting to say COVID, because COVID rates are still high here. So my husband answered for me and said, she's not going because COVID rates are high. And I said, that's not the entire truth. I'm not going because that is not for me. And I just kind of left it in that and left. One of the big things for me is there just aren't any good church options here. So I'm just kind of staying home. I'm reading my Bible. I'm doing other stuff, but I'm staying home because to go there is to be triggered over and over again. And I just want to encourage you, if you are leaving a problematic type church, you don't have to go to church for a while. You can go to a church that is that has denominational support, that has a state, federal, regional oversight. It's a lot safer. Or you could just not go. There's nothing to say that you absolutely must go to a church in the area anywhere. You can stay home, read your Bible or not read your Bible as it suits you. No one can really dictate what your faith answers are on any of this or what you're feeling or thinking. It takes time to process and recover. That's why I'm looking at Jill Duggar and going, girl, I wish you luck, because it's a hard journey. I'm 15, 16 years out. And it's still difficult at best to want to do these things. I enjoyed Tamarindo Church when Lyle was the pastor because he was an excellent pastor and one of the humblest guys I've ever met. But I'm not sure that a place that won't protect me from dog fur is the right place for me to be. So I left. I went a couple times with my husband to various other churches. There's another church about a half mile from here. Their pastor preaches fire and brimstone every time. He preached fire and brimstone at a Christmas Eve worship service, and I was just appalled and astounded by that because Christmas Eve is when you get your visitors in, and the last thing you want to do is drive them all off, describing how God is going to smite them unbelievers. Kim, that's exactly right. What someone else's normal is someone else's tragedy, and doesn't know it. You're absolutely right. That's exactly right. So my husband goes to this new church. I've been with him a couple times. I've had people chase me down to tell me that I'm sinning by masking there. I've observed any number of bad behaviors and terrible people there. This situation with our car, one of the members was driving the situation by making my husband anxious and calling him and saying, "Oh, ignore what the mechanic said. We're going to fix this car." And then he turned around and told my husband, "I never said that." The very next day. And here's the thing, I heard him on speakerphone. I heard him say this thing. So there's some really awful people there. Now, I'm sure there's some really good people, but guess what? Right now, I'm just seeing all the awful ones. Hey, Tolo, Oregon, that's a state I've never been to, believe it or not. Java man, I don't know. And there's some types of prosperity gospel going on with the husbands in the church. I'm just not down with. If you preach, and the revival stuff is really, 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 really triggering to me. All these people screeching about don't wear masks, you're sinning if you're masking, and some prosperity gospel stuff. And I like the pastor there. I like him as a person quite a bit. He's a nice guy. He's got some good ideas. I like the worship team leader. I had the opportunity to join their worship team. That did not pan out because they just painted the place. And if you know me, I'm allergic to the scent of latex paint too. So it's just been a bad situation for me. I just need to sit where I am now and think on these things. But at the same time, I know everybody that is leaving these places, they're dealing with the same thing I'm dealing with. They're dealing with people who are saying, "Are you coming to church? Why aren't you coming to church?" I decided this morning, the next time I get that question, I'm going to say, "How is that any of your business if I'm going to church or not tomorrow?" And then if they persist, I'm going to say, "That's really none of your business either." I'm just going to I am just going to just leave that there. I'm going to go ahead and start telling that. I encourage you to figure out where your boundaries are. And when people start asking you that and you're not feeling it, tell them whatever in the hell you want to tell them. Something to shut them up. I'm surprised that person didn't say, "Don't take your car to the mechanic. We shall pray for it. Exorcise the demons from the car." Java man, I'm surprised too, except I think he's too much old school Christian to do that. I don't think let's lay hand on the car and pray out the demons. Even though my old church, somebody did that. They would lay hands on their car and pray every time it broke down that the issue would resolve itself and fix itself. And I think I heard a Joel Osteen sermon once where Joel talked about something very similar to that. And my husband's listening to Joel going, "Oh, yes." And I'm listening going, "Oh, hell no." So, and there's some things that Joel has said that I like, but I don't like the whole prosperity gospel thing. God wants you to change the oil. Exactly. And God wants you to know when the transmission dies in a place where you can't get an easy transmission change or a cheap one. Tell him you've gone on a date with God at your house. You go, "That's actually a good answer too." What I used to do at my old church, when I left my old church, and I may start doing it here too, is whenever the old people who knew me from my old faith group, when I'd run across them in town, either members or non-members, and they'd say, I heard you were a apostate now. How could you deny God after blah, 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 blah? So what I finally started doing after attempting to shut that down many different ways was when somebody would say, who told you that? And why would they say that? And then they would say, Sabrina said it, or whatever. I'm just coming up with names, random names, and say, why would she say something like that? So every time they would answer me, I would put it back on them with a question. I started doing that after I realized that's what Jesus did with the very super religious folks of his time, is to just keep throwing questions at them. And guess what happens? They shut up because they can't answer all those questions. And towards the end, they're realizing that what they're asking you and saying is so inappropriate that they start feeling foolish enough, they just shut the hell up. So I'm about to start doing that with this lady, I think. So are you going to church tomorrow? Are you going to church tomorrow? Well, yes, I'm going to church tomorrow, but I don't understand why you're not going to church. Well, why are you going to church tomorrow? I'm just going to have to do that. I tried to deny God. He said no. I'm tempted to say, I'm doing what the voices in my head are telling me to do. And it worked pretty effectively. God won't let me deny God. That should be on a t-shirt. That should be in a t-shirt somewhere. So they can't answer too many questions if you start questioning them about their theology. When I go in about 2 weeks to the Northern Virginia, Maryland, D.C. area, which I'm scheduled to go to because my daughter's getting married. And one of the things is I'm going to hang around with my best friend who's still tightly enmeshed in her, I don't want to call it a CULT church, but I can say since they left our old church, we all went to, we all got thrown out. We all left. And she got thrown out because she was a woman that dared have opinions. They've gone from place to place to place to place, and they're all like, I call my old church Possum Creek because it's some of the old name. They're going to Possum Creek Light, and I am not about to go there. So we're talking about visiting our Methodist church while we're there, our old Methodist church, which is where we went and sat on the pew for 10 years to decompress after leaving our old CULT church. So I'm kind of curious to see how all of that is going to work out and whether I'll snap at her. When she was here for a full 10 days visiting me when we first moved here, I managed to control myself until the very last day where I started snapping at her because she was spewing all of this prosperity gospel, just complete BS that I knew was BS. I am doing what the voices in my head said to do. However, it is difficult when they only speak Swahili. Oh my goodness. That's really funny. So it's really a hard struggle. People don't get that when you leave these high demand religious organizations, it takes so long to shut down the voices in your head. And all of us who've done that get them. To this day, I have to shut them down. Every now and then they pop back up again, even if I know it's a bunch of BS. It still is my first go-to sometimes, and I'm not proud of that. There are times when people have said or done things around me, and I'm looking at them with that side eye, thinking, oh, yeah, that's not good. And then, or thinking the CULT thing, which is definitely not good. So it's a little bit different when it's real life. I have less problem with it when it's internet, when somebody says something to me. I'm just kind of like, whatever. And I will move their ravings to Jerks for Jesus, because that was a blog I set up back when I did NLQ, because I started getting so many, you're going to hell in a handbasket type comments, to the point where I finally just started saying, you know, I'm decorating my basket now. I have my soft pillows. I have my candlelight. I have my snacks. I have everything I need for my journey. So that was always a difficult thing for me to deal with. So I started moving people to that, and they stopped leaving those "you're going to hell, you SOB MFer," which I was getting a lot of that. Oh, good evening from Norway. It is actually just over noon here. So we're all in weird time zones from each other, and that's always fun too. Um, so that's the difficult bit, is how to answer the questions. You really have to think about that and work it out well in advance. Like I said, she surprised me yesterday because that was the last thing I expected her to say. And this is someone where, like I said, I was at that event, the launch party for a friend's business, where I was just horribly sick and throwing up. And this same lady, Mary Moonbeams, kept grabbing me and trying to have conversations with me. I'm like this, running like that. And she's wanting to have conversations. I'm like, can't talk now, throwing up. She went to my husband at the end of the night after I sat down at the table for the formal dinner and had crackers and ginger ale and didn't say a thing to anybody. She ran up to my husband and said, "Why is Suzanne treating me so horribly and ignoring me?" And Jim's like, "Well, she's really sick tonight. She's really, really sick with her stomach." And to this day, and she's talked about this with others that know me. Like, why is she treating me like this? It's like, because I was throwing up, dear. And you showed me you're not a safe person to ever be around. Harbor Lee said that if God wanted to punish a sinner, he would make her spend an eternity at Trump's casino. Oh, now see, I would find that fascinating. I always liked going to casinos because, not because I like gambling, because oh heck no, I've worked too hard for what money I've had in my lifetime to ever be comfortable with blowing it on mass amounts of anything. So, which is funny because we're car shopping right now, and I'm pushing towards a new car, and they're real expensive here. But casinos are fascinating people watching places. If you go there and you're like me and you love the people watch, and you're having a day where maybe you're not throwing up, so you're people watching, you're wandering the casino and you're just watching the action. Even by casino standards. Oh, it's too gaudy even by casino standards. That's saying something, because casinos are not known for being the most tasteful places on earth. So there's that. If I had just been an attorney there, then have enough time to rob said casino and they won't be able to send me to jail. Prairie, prairie, prairie. Exactly. Casinos. And it was kind of funny because at my old Quiverful church, when I would go down to visit family in Louisiana towards the end of my time at that church, where I was starting to question everything that I learned and was starting to have different theology, sometimes we would go to the gambling boat. I'm just going to say the gambling boat. If you're in Louisiana or somewhere up and down the Ohio or the Mississippi, you would have been pretty familiar with the gambling boat. These casinos brought in these huge river boats, tacky them up, turn them into casinos, and they take you out to the middle of the river, and then you gamble. So after not starting to come out of things, I started going with my husband to the gambling boat. And I actually ended up going with one of my best friends from the church. She had loosened up quite a bit, and we went to the gambling boat together one time, and that was a blast. Except for one thing, I got to see that she really enjoyed male gaze. I hadn't picked up on that before. People had said it. I don't know. I ran off with my change purse of nickels because that's all I'm ever going to do is play the nickel one-arm bandits. That's all I ever do, because if you lose $2, it's $2. You've long since gotten $2 worth of entertainment out of the casino. She was doing things where she was dressed all fancy, and I was like in jeans and a t-shirt, about like I am now, and comfortable shoes. And when she dressed at the casino, I said, "Chloe, do you really want to wear that into the casino?" said, you know, everybody there is to be dressed like I am. There's nobody dresses up for that. He says, well, I see in movies and TV, people dress up when they go to the casino. I said, not really. Maybe if you're going to a high class place in Vegas, you might dress up. Or like if you were seeing one of the championship fights or something like that beforehand, you would dress up. So here she was. There's some weirdo. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. I got distracted because the gates popped open and some Tico came through, and it's kind of weird. Does that mean somebody has a key to my gate that I didn't know about? But he's gone now. So anyway, long story short, she got on the very top of the gambling boat and was gyrating and dancing like I had never seen her do. And I was kind of jaw dropped because I still had a few of those things. So she was dressed to her husband. She's gyrating and dancing and drinking. And yeah, I caught her at the high stakes tables for the roulette, giggling and blowing on some guy's dice too. So I didn't tell anybody that she acted like that at the casino. I certainly did not tell her husband because I definitely was not comfortable with that. And I actually tried to talk to her about it afterwards. And her theology was, and later this kind of theology led to her having a pretty significant affair. She said, my husband is not a very manly man. My husband is a wimp. He does not protect me. He does not do for me all the things that a masculine man should do for a woman. So because he wasn't doing the manly man crap, she said all the bets were off with her marriage. She was allowed to do whatever she wanted, including have an affair with somebody else because, St. Paul, St. Paul saying this is what husbands and wives have to do, and he wasn't filling his role, so she was under no obligation to fill hers. People used to dress up to fly on an airplane. Java, I remember those days. I remember being a kid and we were flying to Las Vegas because my father liked to gamble. My father was kind of a high roller in his own weird way. So we would fly to Las Vegas, dressed to the nines to get on the plane. I'm doing okay, Angela. No, the guy was not having an affair, Prairie, and he lived with us for a while she was having an affair, and that really got awkward. He left her, and that was one of those times where I told him she was having an affair. The pastor and I went to him and said, look, she's having an affair with Mr. So-and-so. So I would never again rat anybody out to the pastor ever again after how sideways that went. So he moved in with us for a while, her husband did. And she was constantly calling and showing up on our doorstep and trying to get him to come back, which I don't quite understand that theology. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And I've talked about before, the old church, the old Quiverful church, had probably 15 to 20% of people that I knew of that had affairs. And almost all of the affair havers had not one bit of guilt about it. They all said the same thing almost to a man or a woman. They said, my spouse is not living up to their biblically ordained spousal role, so all bets are off, and I'm allowed to do whatever in the hell I want. Prairie, I would say she would be a gold digger except for one thing. She was never very successful at it. She was gorgeous. She was a beautiful girl. But she was missing some things. And she was dealing with an eating disorder at the time, too. It was just bad. How much of her mental was eating disorder? How much was something else? I don't know. I'm not a shrink. I can't diagnose anybody or do anything like that. And I loved her dearly, but she was never very successful at any of that. She's passed on now, so we don't have to worry about her at all. But I got her to go on the gambling boat with me. I mean, I thought that was pretty amazing. And that shows we were so many thousand miles away from the church. So we were kind of doing our own thing. Our own thing. We even talked about getting matching tattoos or piercings during that trip. So there we go. rebellion and quiverful. And men and women both will do that. And the thing is, I saw it a few times there too. Acting like Charlie Church in front of everybody else. The second everybody's back is turned, you're doing something else. Maybe she is being an attorney at Trump's casino. She would probably be thrilled by that. I mean, secretly thrilled. It just made for a really awkward trip. At one point in the trip, we stopped at I can't remember if it was Williams Petroleum or Wawa, but one of the huge, or Sheets even, huge, not as big as Buc-ee's, but gas stations. It has everything. And she had a fit and started trouble and grabbed the manager and was bitching. Why? Because they had dirty magazines sitting out on the magazine rack, like Playboy and Penthouse and Hustler. And she was rather outraged by that. I was kind of like, it is what it is. But not her. She was demanding they take that down. Yet a week before, she'd be on top of that casino getting her swerve on. I just had to laugh at her and her shifting boundaries a lot of times. And I see that a lot in these churches. Prairie, exactly. Java, that would be horrific, at least for me. That would wear on me because that would be the first time you start going, ah, would be the last time. I'd probably go on doing this because I don't deal well with loud noises. I haven't since I left my old church. I can't even listen to loud worship music anymore. If I do, I start kind of freaking out. And I was sorry to lose her as a friend, but she told me that we had to stop being friends because I was going to Toronto Airport Christian Fellowship at that time for conferences, and that was the devil. I don't think it was the devil, but I know it wasn't the answer either. Rules for me, but not for thee. Cognitive dissonance is annoying, but at least it lets us know the credibility status. Yes, you probably missed it, Prairie. I was talking about running across somebody yesterday that was questioning me about going to church. And it was somebody that has got some really strange things going on, including deciding at almost 40 she's going to be a supermodel. So I think that a lot of times in some of these more out there groups where there's no oversight, there's no state, regional, national leadership, and even then it's not 100% safe, because look at the Southern Baptist Convention, what's going on there now. So that's clearly not safe either. But it's safer than some of these non-denominational places where people seem like that being delusional seems to be part of the equation. Duggars, yeah. Yes, Prairie. And we were talking about the Duggars earlier. I'm waiting for the first Duggar child book, The Tell-All, because that person is going to make a mint. So hurry up, Derek. You can tell that tale too. You don't have to be exactly a Duggar daughter to tell it. And so that's where it is. Avoid those delusional people. If they start asking you questions, reflect the question right back and just go with it. Just say, okay, I don't quite know, but why are you asking me this? Why do you need to know? It's easier than giving them any kind of fodder that they're going to just run their mouths and moan and bitch and all that. And like I was saying, when we were doing the car thing with this guy at church, he apparently shared that with other people at church. And I am not about triangulation with anybody at church. It doesn't seem as though Josh has pulled change yet. Still sitting at the Wash County Jail, so it seems. Prairie, I got to talk about that for a little minute. Josh, the judge said that he wanted to send Josh to Seagoville federal prison in Seagoville, Texas, I think it is, which is like in the southeastern Dallas suburbs, I think is where I saw that is. They have a sexual predator treatment program there, and a sexual offender, I should say, not predator. I've got my mind on Caleb Williams this morning. And they want to send him there. It's a 5-hour ride from Springdale, apparently. So I don't know how that's going to go. I don't know if Josh is going to say yay or nay because the judge said this was strictly voluntary. And it's not a supermax, I don't think. I don't think. The place they were going to send him in Arkansas is a supermax. Prairie, yeah, I was wondering about that. And the fact that they're hanging on to him makes me think that there is some shenanigans going on about where to send him, whether it's trying to wait for a spot for him in the SO program or something else going on. I was thinking he was going to the place where they put a lot of these guys in Phoenix. They keep them separated so they don't end up in federal pound me in the rear end jail. So they don't end up having bad things happen to him. Even if Josh wants to go, Bureau of Prisons can decide not to send him. That is true, Prairie. They can send you anywhere. I certainly saw that happen in a bunch of cases that I followed. I think the clearest one I saw was when Adam Swap. Now there's a name to get to Google. ADDAMSWAPP, who was a Mormon fundamentalist that back in 1988, I want to say, maybe 87, he held the federal government at siege in his compound because he had all these weapons and they thought that he was going to do a mass shooting or something. So they surrounded the place and they put the whole family under siege. And it didn't go well. There was a lot of shooting, fighting. A couple of people died on the federal side of it. They finally lured Adam out and they shot him and they put him in prison. But instead of having him serve his sentence at a Bureau of Prisons facility in Utah, where he committed his crimes, they sent him to one of the Phoenix area prisons to do out his time. And the reasoning was kind of interesting. They said they were doing that because one of the guys that was killed, who was a federal agent, had friends working at the Utah prison. So they didn't want to send him there. They wanted to give him a fair shake, so they sent him to Arizona instead. I hope they sent him to the roughest federal transfer center first, if only to teach him a lesson. Prairie, that's going to be interesting. That's a tell-all book I would read if Josh Duggar wrote one. Even if I can't stand him and he's Smugger Duggar to me, always and forever, I would read that book like crazy because I would want to know. I guarantee you that Josh is in for the roughest awakening of his life going to federal prison. He's going to have to serve 85% of his sentence. There is no early parole for federal prison. You got to do what you got to do. There's no luxury. He's not going to a club fed. Specialty K Joy, it's club fed, not club med. He's not going to club fed. He's not going to a white collar place where they have beautiful grounds and all these restrictions. He's going to do hard time. And like I said, they were talking about a supermax facility, so I don't really know for sure. But it's going to be interesting. I question if he's going to make it out without getting permanently maimed. Prairie, I do too. And I don't know that I want that to happen to him, as awful as he is. Old boy is going to be club ped. There's a club ped, like I said, in Arizona where they send a lot of these guys and they have them all together so that they have safety in numbers and they aren't getting shanked by the fellow prisoners. So I really expected him to go someplace like that. And he still well may do that. But the way the judge was talking, it was going to be either club fed, not club fed, but right there in Arkansas at Supermax or to this other place in Texas. But it remains to be seen. And I guarantee you we're going to hear about how it goes for him because of the fact that he's going to walk in there with a target on his back just because of his fame and how he got his fame for nothing else. And you know damn good and well the people around him are going to sell stories to tabloids. What else do the prisoners have to do all day? There have been a number of high-profile prisoners that is what the other prisoners have done. They've sold stories. I expect to see that happen again. I hope he does have a rough time because his victims are permanently in prison by their trauma because of, like him. Yeah. And I think so too. Like I said yesterday, I actually commented on something Jill and Derek posted because they did not mention the victims. And the victims, it's a terrible toll on them for the rest of their lives. There's no recovery from this. There's getting somewhat better. But a lot of these kids are going to carry this trauma for the rest of their lives. And that's just not right. They're in a prison that somebody else forced upon them. Okay, you guys, I'm going to go. I hear Jim rattling around in the kitchen, which is not always a good thing. I think I have to go cook some lunch and see what we're doing today for the rest of the day, besides cleaning out the laundry room. I'm not wishing that on him. I bet they'll send to Phoenix if they're smart. Any non-offenders would get major street cred if they could get out of it. I thought about that. Yeah, exactly. Okay, you guys, I'm going to go. Love you guys. Take care. Have a wonderful night, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are, morning. Take care.